All right, so Kate has told me that we have a quorum. So I will go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the representative town meeting of the town of Darien. Without objection, I'd like to accept the agenda. Kate, let me know if there's any objection.
Please raise your hand if you have an objection. And remember that it looks like a little hand, that green is down and red is up. I'm seeing no objections.
Okay, we'll take the objection, the agenda. The next item is approval of minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of December 7th, 2020?
Let's see, I'm trying to see. Lisa Yarnell.
Thank you, Lisa. And can I have a second?
Mac Patrick.
Thanks, Mac. Any changes, additions, deletions?
I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Okay. Good, then we're ready to vote.
Hang on a second, Seth, hang on a second.
Yes. Okay.
Cheryl Russell, you had your hand raised.
No, I'm sorry, Kate. I hit the wrong thing.
Okay.
Okay, so we look like we're ready to vote?
Yes.
All right, all those in favor, please?
Seth, you asked for a poll? This is
Yeah.
the December 7th minutes?
Yes.
All right, Seth, I'm seeing 100% of those voting voted yes.
All right, the minutes
No.
for December. Okay, so the minutes for December 7th stand approved. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
One moment.
All right.
Bert? Bert von Stupelnagel, you have your hand raised. Okay, I'm going to put him down. Okay, go ahead, Seth.
All right. Can I have a motion now to approve the minutes of December 28th?
Okay, I think that's what Bert wanted. Bert von Stupelnagel.
Okay, and can I have a second, please?
Monica McNally.
Thank you, Monica. All right. Are there any corrections, additions, deletions to December 28th?
Clara Sartori has her hand raised. Clara? Okay, no questions.
All right, then we're ready to vote.
Let me send it out.
Okay, go ahead. We will go ahead and poll. I like the poll, Kate. This is.
Okay, you have, the motion is carrying. You have a few abstentions, so we'll have to see who that is afterwards, but the motion carries.
Oh, that's great. Then the minutes of December 28th stand approved. The next item is announcements. I am sad to report that Joan Davis died on January 5th at 91. Back in October, we honored her upon her retirement after 34 years of service to this body. And I now ask you for a moment of silence to honor her passing. Thank you. I also would like to welcome some new members to the RTM. Michael Cortese from District 3, Eric Kennigan from District 4, Laura Gray, and I apologize, Michael, I understand that Michael Wheeler is, I think, actually called Sean Wheeler, Wadil Platt, Janet Grogan, welcome back, Janet, and Sarah Madsen. We'll now move on to some presentations. Jess Ivanacek came to us last year and spoke about Norwalk. We invited her back on the heels of the State of the Town meeting, which sort of gave us a picture of Darien, and Jessica was able to come this evening and give us a view of what's going on in Norwalk and where Norwalk is headed. So without further ado, I will introduce Jessica Ivanacek, Chief of Economic and Community Development for the City of Norwalk. Jessica, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me as a guest. Can you see my screen?
I can.
We will note
Great.
that Jessica's last name has changed. Congratulations, Jessica.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, a lot of change over the last year. So thank you very much for inviting me back. I'm really happy to speak with you again this year. I put together a little presentation for this evening so that you would be able to see some of the things that we're working on in Norwalk. But thank you very much. Run through this. It probably will take probably 10 minutes or so, and we'll touch on some of the things that you had mentioned, SoNo collection and so on. Just need to, oh, there we go. So economic and community development in the city of Norwalk may look a little bit different than in some of the other municipalities in Connecticut. In September 2018, the city actually restructured, and in doing so, they created a couple of new positions. And one of the new positions is the position that I hold, Chief of Economic and Community Development. And the reason why I say it's unique is because it brings together 4 different departments that were previously directly under the mayor. The first is planning and zoning. The second is building and code enforcement. We also have business development and tourism, transportation, mobility, and parking. So 4 really unique, distinct areas, but as a matter of fact, they really come together quite well in the way that the city of Norwalk works. We have the ability to understand how projects are moving through the pipeline. We also have the ability to understand how those projects impact transportation, mobility, and parking. And then in addition to that, we think about the vitality on the street and what business owners are seeing and what residents are experiencing. So You know, again, a really unique way of looking at it, but as a matter of fact, we work as a really, really close team, and we have our meetings in order to be able to see what's coming down the pipeline and how we can work cohesively as a team to be able to make that happen as smoothly as possible, but also understanding some of the impacts of the development and understanding some of the opportunities we have. So as a whole, the department has a $4.4 million operating budget and a $5.8 million capital budget, and I'll talk a little bit more about how we think about this budget moving forward. So, you know, last year I came and spoke to you when we were still able to meet in person, and I talked to you about some of the strategies that Norwalk has, and one of those strategies is identifying growth. And we have a few different nodes in Norwalk where we see growth in particular. One is Merritt 7, we see Wall Street, West Ave, the SoNo / South Norwalk area, East Norwalk, you know, and we really try to focus our growth around the 4 transportation nodes that we have in Norwalk. We know that that's a unique characteristic for Norwalk, and that those 4 stations really allow us to focus that growth around transit-oriented development. And of course, what we've seen over the last number of months is that the transit ridership has gone down immensely, and we see in our parking lots that are adjacent to those train stations a reduction in between 80 and 90% in the commuter parking that we would normally see. And that's impacted the Norwalk Parking Authority and the way in which the Norwalk Parking Authority is thinking about their revenue. But you know, we're really confident that as COVID passes, that this trend will subside, and that we'll see the revenue coming out of the train stations. But more than that, we'll see the vitality on the street around the train station. So we're trying to make the most out of being able to move infill redevelopment in proximity to those train stations, and we're seeing that, and I'll touch on some of that throughout the presentation. This slide here talks about another strategy that Norwalk has when it comes to economic development. And one of the things that we're doing is we're planning ahead for growth. And I think, you know, one of the things that we often hear is that, oh, we're using operating budget, or we're using capital budget to do studies and do those studies work, and what do they show us and what do they tell us? Well, in December of last year, we actually passed our POCD, so the Plan for Conservation and Development. And inside that plan, there were a lot of goals and initiatives that were identified for the city. We had spent 2 or 3 years talking to the public and asking them what they wanted to see in Norwalk and how we wanted to achieve it. And so that POCD really captured what the city of Norwalk is thinking about moving forward. And I'm going to touch on 3 specific plans that we're looking at, because you had asked for us to sort of showcase what we're thinking about over the next year. And three of the plans that you see on this list are a part of that. So the first one I'm going to touch on is the East Norwalk Transit-Oriented Development Plan. This is a plan that we put together with $125,000 from the state. We adopted the plan in October 2020, but as a matter of fact, the draft zoning is under peer review currently, and we anticipate that adoption in April or May of 2021. So why is it important? Well, it's important because it's really the first study that we've done that looks at underutilized assets in the city in and around the East Norwalk train station. The second is that, you know, we know the East Norwalk corridor connects with I-95, and we have it, you know, we have an interesting and unique neighborhood over there, creating walkability and mixed use environments. It also is connecting I-95 to the beaches and to some of the recreation areas. So we're not only looking at protecting existing businesses and expanding existing businesses, but we want to understand how we can integrate new business into East Norwalk and balance that with residential, and making sure that we're meeting the community's needs. And like any other effort, we've heard a lot of feedback. We've heard a lot of feedback that focuses around concerns, but a lot of feedback that focuses around a lot of positives and a lot of optimism, and being able to think about that area and being able to think about underutilized assets that the city currently has in order to really enhance quality of life in that area. So we're looking at putting an emphasis on high quality design, really bringing in the landscaping and increasing height and density through that. And part of the thought there is if we bring more residents into the areas, they actually support the community amenities and support business on the ground. And so when we think about making local businesses successful and really being able to enhance the neighborhood itself, we think about being able to think about open space, green space, and then the residents and how they use that. A second study that we're looking at is the industrial zone study, and this is $100,000 from city funding. We did just put Utile Architecture and Planning firm under contract, and the study began in October 2020, and it's likely to be completed in summer of 2021. And again, why is it important? Well, the last time we looked at industrial zones was 2005, 2006, and so we've gone through a lot of change, a lot of significant change through that. We have a lot of questions that we want to ask, and we don't always have the answers in City Hall. And so we're working with Utile to be able to figure out the answers to some of those questions. And some of them are, how much land should be allocated to contractors? And I'm sure, every municipality is seeing this, but are industrial lands in the right place? How do they support jobs? What does that look like? Or should zoning boundaries be redrawn? How are we thinking about zoning so that it supports, if it should support residential and industrial, commercial industrial, and what does that look like? And I think, we have kind of a unique topography with the Norwalk River up the center of Norwalk, and we have a lot of industry that actually is supported through the river, and a lot of water-based industry that still functions on a daily basis, bringing in barges, and also a lot of aquaculture companies as well. And so it's thinking about how to support the local businesses that use the water and are dependent on the water, but at the same time thinking about how those contractor yards are looking and where they're located, and trying to be able to understand how they fit with some of the other studies that we're doing with Norwalk, not only the East Avenue TOD study, but also this study here, the zoning regulation rewrite. So the industrial study and the zoning regulation rewrite really go hand in hand. And, the zoning regulation rewrites $200,000 from the city. We did choose the consultant, anticipated start in February 2021 with 18-month completion. And this is another one of those stories, right? The regulations haven't seen a complete overhaul in over 30 years. We've been doing piecemeal changes and making amendments over the last 30 years to be able to allow for certain things and to help modernize the zoning. But what we've seen as a result of that are inconsistent pieces in the zoning regulations and things that we don't always want to support, or the language is vague and there's a little bit of confusion. So what we'd like to do is look at the zoning regulations and rewrite them. And it's a really heavy lift. It's tough for a municipality to do that, but I'm really pleased that Planning and Zoning is taking this on as one of their initiatives for 2021. And I expect that will be passed it'll be passed in 18 months. It is a heavy lift, but I think one of the things that we are looking at specifically is Route 1 corridor, which and the Connecticut Ave corridor, which should be addressed. I think you've all seen what that looks like. And we have large parking fields in front of some of the buildings. Some of the curb cuts could be thought of a little bit differently. We could be thinking about placing the parking fields in a different place and thinking about the street front a little bit differently. So, I'm excited to be able to see what the zoning regulation rewrite looks like. And I think this, along with the industrial study, will be really helpful for Norwalk moving forward. So another item that I talked about last year, but wanted to give you an update on, was some of the economic development tools that we have in Norwalk. And so much like many other communities across the US, we have opportunity zones, and we actually have three census tracts that make up our urban core. So it's really the SoNo/South Norwalk area, along with the Wall Street West Ave area. And this is great because they're contiguous census tracts. So it really allows us to speak to developers and different private entities about not only the enterprise zones, but also not only the opportunity zones, but also the opportunity funds that come along with those. And we receive voicemails, emails, phone calls each and every week, not only asking about opportunity zones, but also asking about the funds, how people can invest in the funds, and also businesses that are looking for investors. And so, one of the challenges with that, and I'm sure other communities have seen it as well, is that we don't necessarily have a public list of who has an opportunity zone or who's using an opportunity fund or has an opportunity fund. And so, we just talked with the state DCD today about that challenge, where we have different businesses that are coming in looking for investors, or investors looking for businesses, and we can't always make the connection that we would like to make And we were talking with the state to talk to the federal government about maybe making amendments to that legislation to make it a little bit more transparent. The second is enterprise zones. And the reason I added this to the slide is because we have been offering enterprise zones for a long time in South Norwalk. We've seen a number of different developers take advantage of that. It's a 7-year tax abatement with different percentages each and every year for the 7 years. But we've actually gone through the public process to expand our enterprise zone. And that enterprise zone would then be expanded into the yellow portion that you see on the map, which is our Wall Street West Ave area. And the reason why this is important is because we're trying to overlay the different tools that we have in Norwalk. So for example, the green and the yellow that you see on the map, they're all opportunity zones currently. So the enterprise zone for Norwalk right now is the green. And if we add the yellow in, then we basically have 100% overlay on both of those tools. So we're trying to be able to support tools that can be mixed and matched, and also support growth in those areas in particular. That's what we consider our urban core. The last item on this slide, tax increment financing, I mentioned this because it's another tool that we're looking at passing, and we're actually, I shouldn't say we're looking at passing it, we're actually looking to explore it first and foremost. And we're looking to explore it in Census Tract 437, which again is that yellow census tract. And the main takeaway for this particular slide is that not only are we looking at our urban core and identifying where we want to grow there, but we're also then supporting that growth through being able to overlay different tools that apply to certain geographies in order to be able to focus that growth. So, I always struggle with adding a slide like this and not adding a slide like this, but it is the times and people are curious as to what all the communities are doing. And I'm on the phone each and every day talking to different communities around Connecticut, asking them what they're doing in support of businesses during COVID. So I wanted to just take a few minutes to highlight some of the efforts that we're currently doing and have been launched since last March. So one of the initiatives that we have was to partially close Washington. So we put out barriers in order to be able to support the restaurants. And that meant being able to offer them outdoor dining. And we were really tight for some of the outdoor dining space. And, when I go to Darien, I see that you guys are doing the same thing. I see Bodega and some of the restaurants in the back there have expanded outdoor dining spaces. And I've seen a few additional outdoor dining spaces. And I think, we've done the same thing in Norwalk. We're trying to increase the number of seats that we have outside, knowing that there are different regulations in the executive order that govern outside versus inside. So the other thing that we did is that we actually condensed our outdoor dining permit process. We had two separate processes. One was the actual permit that you got for outdoor dining. The second was actually seeking approval through the legal department and supplying a certificate of insurance. And we merged those together to be able to create one process. And we put that process online. We created an online application that fed into a database that we were able to pass from department to department to be able to seek approvals. And what ended up happening was we were able to actually supply approvals or approve some of these outdoor dining initiatives in 10 days or less. And many times it was actually 3 days or less. So if you had the plans and you were able to supply that and show us what you were doing, you were able to get an approval that was expedited. Some of the other things that we've done is opening up walk-up windows at City Hall. We put out drop-off mailboxes outside of City Hall so that we can accept site plans and do site plan review. Currently, City Hall is open to the public. It's been open to the public for many, many months, but we're asking people that need City Hall appointments to be able to make an appointment online. So if you're coming to see planning and zoning, or you're coming to see the building and code enforcement office, we want you to sign up online. We want you to come in. We want you to have an appointment in advance. And we are seeing people. We probably see a handful of people in each of those departments each week. The last thing that I want to point out on this particular slide is that we just announced last week a small business assistance program. And that is something that we've been working really hard towards. We had pulled $75,000 from the economic community development budget, and the city pulled $75,000 from contingency, and we created a $150,000 assistance program. So we do plan to award 30 grants of $5,000 each, and that will happen in the second week of February. But we realize that businesses are really suffering. We've seen a lot of businesses close over the last number of months, and not only in Norwalk, but across the state and across the US and across the world, to be perfectly honest. So, we want to be able to support businesses in as many ways as we can. And part of that small business assistance program was reprogramming money that was already in the hopper for some other activities that were economic community development related. But we heard what people said. We knew that they needed support, so we were able to retool some of that money. So is it working, and what have we seen? Well, as a matter of fact, we do believe it's working, all of our efforts. And this slide shows that what we're seeing in FY21 compared to FY20 is really on target. And so for permanent revenue for fiscal year 20, we saw 1.15 million, and we've already seen 900 million in revenue through permits this year alone. We still have another 5 months of the fiscal year. Same with cost of construction. We're on target, if not above, ahead of target. And the same with number of new businesses. We've seen a number of businesses close, but we've also seen a number of new businesses come to Norwalk, and we continue to see that. So, as much as we are in the middle of COVID and we've seen businesses be hit, we also are seeing numbers that we would have anticipated outside of COVID. Just trying to switch my slide here. Let's see. Oh. There we go. So I wanted to highlight a few specific areas and neighborhoods for you and what's going on, so you can get a sense of the development that's happening. So I'm sure everyone knows Merritt 7, where Merritt meets 7, and the development that's going on there. Not only do we have the 1.4 million square feet of Class A office space, but we also have a number of new developments that are underway. And one of those is the Curb, which is 700 units of housing, and that is really 3 phases. The first phase is fully leased, the second phase is nearing completion, and the third is under construction. And that what's happening in it, when you talk to folks at the Curb, what they're picturing is really building an ecosystem that is meant for people to live up near Merritt 7 and also to work there. We've seen the train station. We know that the train station's going under construction by DOT. And that's part of the story as well. But I think, one of the things that's really exciting with Norwalk is this Connecticut Innovation Center, and it's slated for 2021. We're talking about 4 stories, 15,000 square feet of office space, R&D, 3 apartments for visiting artists and designers. And it really is becoming a little ecosystem on its own. And I think part of that is, much like what I had talked about earlier, having residents in the area, having people living in the area, and being able to support what that looks like. So the top photo that you see is the Curb, the middle photo that you see is the transit, and then the bottom is this Connecticut Innovation Center. So again, just a really exciting area coming together. From the West Avenue area, which is some people call it Uptown, we're seeing development as well. And here we're seeing the Pinnacle, which was the last phase of Waypoint, projected purchase from Toll Brothers in 2019, and planning submission in late 2020. So we're really excited that's moving forward. Some people know it as the Loman Plaza. If you've driven by for the last little while, the last year or two, what you've seen is the old Loman's Plaza with fencing around the outside. So we're just really excited to be able to get moving in this area. And some of these sites that have laid dormant for a while, we're excited to be able to see submissions coming in. And that's not to say that all of Wall Street West Ave is laying dormant. That's not the case by any means. But when I say that, I mean particular sites that you see with fencing around it, or particular sites that you know have been stalled, and then you see the submission come through, and it's just it's great for the neighborhood, and it's great for the city. So in South Norwalk, we have 7 projects under construction or recently completed, and that includes over 400 new units of housing, 50,000 square feet of commercial space, and we have another 6 additional projects in the pipeline. So again, I just go back to that strategy that we talked about not only last year, but we touched on this year, which is really identifying where we want to grow, overlaying the tools to make sure that the growth happens in those areas, and then being able to really step back and market those areas. And I think that, you know, what we've seen with South Norwalk in particular is just a lot of really great development that has then spurred additional development, and it's really been a catalyst for the area as a whole. Washington Village is one of those projects that I talked about last year, but it's a big project, 273 units of new housing, and it does have 50% public housing, 25% workforce, and 25% market rate, so it's mixed income housing. But I mention this because the third phase is under construction. You can see the top photo is before and the bottom photo is after, and this again is also one of those great projects that's a catalyst for the area. It's adjacent to a recently completed Ryan Park, and obviously there was a lot of funding that came from HUD, and this project has a lot of funding in general, but it's really enhanced the neighborhood, it's really enhanced the area, and Ryan Park has a whole public art aspect to it that's being installed currently, which is also really exciting. So I also want to talk really quickly about SoNo Collection. SoNo Collection is our the mall that everyone I think knows about at this point, and it was opened in October 2019. And, you know, it was closed in March 2020 due to COVID, but it did reopen in May. And the interesting thing about the SoNo Collection, when I talked to them, is that they would say, you know, since COVID-19 hit, we've actually had 10 stores that have opened. And I was in there just last week, actually, just over the weekend, and you know, there were a number of people shopping in there. The stores look great, and there are counters at each of the stores. So, you know, they've really focused on safety and rebuilding consumer confidence. And I do have to say that they have counters in each of the door openings. A lot of the stores have closed off their openings except for a small area, so that each of the patrons that want to visit the store need to go through there. They have someone with a clicker at the front, and you know, they have sanitizing machines, and they've doubled down on their cleaning as well. So we do know that the SoNo Collection, just like any other of the businesses, has been hit through COVID, but at the same time, it's really given them a chance to open up their stores, and they're seeing really great things. So I think that I don't have specific information on SoNo Collection because I would leave it to Matt Seebeck to be able to offer. He's the senior general manager of the mall, but you know, all in all, I think they're really optimistic, and they feel like 2021 is going to be a really strong year for them. So one of the things that I did want to mention was East Norwalk. There is a lot of development going on in East Norwalk as well. And of course, I mentioned the East Norwalk TOD plan. But one of the projects in particular I wanted to mention is the 230 East Ave project, which is right at East Avenue and the trains right adjacent to the train station. You can see in the picture the actual train tracks right in front of the building there. And it's 189 units of housing, but also 64,000 square feet of commercial space. And again, one of those ecosystems that we're trying to build. And I think that with the East Avenue train station TOD plan, as well as some of the zoning and industrial studies that we're doing, we're going to see a lot of growth in East Norwalk. And this is really just, again, a catalyst for more growth and a catalyst for balanced growth. It's not always just about growth, right? It depends on what kind of growth we're seeing. We want a mix of residential, we want a mix of office and commercial space. And this, again, shows the public plaza with a lot of green space, and it really is what we're going for. So thinking ahead, so we're going through the budgeting process for the next fiscal year, FY22, and some of the things that we're thinking about in economic community development with the city. So we're talking a lot about digitizing and modernization, and I think one of the things that I talked to you about was the online permitting and licensing that we did for the outdoor dining. So, you know, we have a lot to do with digitizing and modernizing, and that includes the online permitting and licensing. We would like to be able to really focus 2021 on being able to accept building permits and accept zoning permits online, being able to actually process them through each city department, including fire marshal, including health department, including DPW, and allowing the resident and the applicant to be able to see the application online so that they know which department has it, who the contact is, and what they need to be able to provide moving forward. Another set of initiatives that we have are arts and culture. We're really focused heavily on public art, and we're really focused heavily on being able to think about how art is being integrated into some of the development that's happening in Norwalk and what that looks like. It supports not only open space, but it's also thinking about how private developers can support that as well. And we've put together capital budgets to support arts and culture and being able to think about different pieces that we would like across the city and thinking about where those locations are. The next one is transportation initiatives, and I'm sure Darien is thinking about this as well as other Connecticut municipalities. We're thinking about Vision Zero, we're thinking about complete streets, we're going through different phases of upgrading our signals to be adaptive signals so that they're responsive to traffic levels and at certain times of the day. The other piece is business support. So we did do the COVID Small Business Assistance Program, and we're going to continue thinking about what business support looks like. We asked for $150,000 in the budget for a small business Main Street program, and that's a flexible program where this year we not only did the COVID grants, but we also purchased brand new garbage cans for the Wall Street West Ave area as well as Washington. In addition, we did holiday decorating along Washington and along Wall Street. And we also did a number of different efforts that really supported small business, including some beautification and placemaking exercises. So I think, you know, one of the things that we are thinking about is the utilization of outside, thinking about how outdoor dining connects with some of the buildings and some of the new development, and really thinking about the connectivity piece, not only in each neighborhood itself, but then how you connect one neighborhood to the next. And part of thinking about that is Washington and the SoNo area to the SoNo collection up West Ave, thinking about that connection, and also thinking about the connection over the Strathalina Bridge to East Norwalk. So different efforts that are going on, but I wanted to be able to give you a snapshot of all the things that are going on in Norwalk that we're working on, and also a little bit of a teaser of what we're thinking about for 2021.
Lovely, Jessica. Thank you very much. We can't say there wasn't a lot there in a short period of time. It was not, that took some doing. There might be a question or two. I don't know. Does anybody have a question? I don't want to make this a long thing, but if somebody had a question, I wanted to at least allow it to be heard.
Absolutely, and part of me putting my email and my cell here, as well as wasn't sure exactly of the format of today. So if people want to email or call me, then they're more than welcome to do that too. So I welcome questions now, but I'm more than happy to take a call offline tomorrow as well.
Lovely.
Okay, Seth, I see Jim Cameron and then Laura Pesci-Gray.
Okay. First of all, my apologies to Laura Pesci-Gray. I didn't pronounce your name correctly. I'm sorry. Anyway, Jim, you want to start?
Jim, you need to unmute yourself. Maybe he didn't want to. Okay.
Okay. Laura, did you?
You need
Sure.
to unmute yourself. There you go.
Yes, no problem with my name, no problem. Okay, I was just curious, with such a big project, how did you decide on Utile Architecture and Planning to do that study for your community?
Yeah, absolutely. So regardless of the studies that we go through, and actually one of the studies that we're also undertaking this year is the Transportation Master Plan. But normally what we do is we write a scope, and it goes out as an RFP, a request for proposal services, and we post that online and we bid it online. And basically we have a number of different applicants, a number of different services and vendors that apply and respond to that RFP. From there, we usually read through all the applications and we generally shortlist them. And for the Transportation Master Plan, for example, we had numerous vendors and consultant groups that had applied and responded, but we chose 4. So same with the Utile group. We shortlisted to 4. We brought them in. We had a set criteria of that we measure against. Each person on the panel of interviewers has their criteria sheet. we score each of the presenters, and then we actually debrief after the meeting and go through all of our results. And then in some cases we do a follow-up, but not normally. And we take those results and we actually award the contract to the vendor that has successfully met each of the criteria that we asked for in the scope. And, I think there's a couple important things there. One is ensuring that the scope is written so that it is inclusive of all of the things that you want in that contract, and that you expect your vendor to be able to deliver to you. And then the second important thing there is the scoring criteria. So not only do we score against each of the actual criteria that we ask for in the scope, but we also get a sense of if the company or the organization has done community outreach before, if they've done public outreach before, what kind of reputation they have, if we've worked with them in the past, if we know what their product looks like. And really what we're looking for is that public engagement piece, and ensuring that not only that they engage the public, but they're research driven, they're analytical, and that they think comprehensively about what Norwalk is doing currently and what Norwalk can do in the future. And so Untitled was one of those companies that really stood out amongst all of the group, and we felt really strongly about them.
Thank you, Jessica. If that's it, I think I would move along. And Kate, you seeing anything more, or?
Nope, no more.
Okay. Jessica, again, many thanks.
Of course, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was very, very interesting.
Thank you.
I will now introduce David Knopf, Director of Health at Darien. And it isn't like we don't get updates on COVID-19 and vaccines, but the scenario and the scene seems to change, and the rules seem to change so fast. I think it's good to whenever you can get a briefing to get one. I'm happy to report to the Director of Health in Darien that I got my vaccination. And with that, I'll introduce David Knopf.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody, and thanks for inviting me. And there's one thing that was made clear in that earlier presentation. This year has presented us with challenges that we never dreamed that we would be facing. We're all of us, I'm sure, are experiencing work conditions and living conditions that we never have experienced before. That said, what I'd like to do is to just kind of do an update on where we are in Darien with the COVID virus counts and numbers. Kate, could you advance the slide, please? Thank you. This really is a pretty graphical visual about what's happened with positive COVID reports in Darien since the beginning of time, we'll call it, last March. And what you can see is on the left is last spring, and on the right is more current. Numbers started going up right after Halloween, and they kept going up, and then they really peaked right after New Year's. So we've kind of attributed the increases a lot to do with gatherings, family gatherings. You didn't see an increase in numbers of cases when school first opened. We still don't see a lot of cases transmitted in schools. We tend to see that there's a lot of in-family transmission. A lot of households have multiple cases. So the one thing that I think that we should look towards and cross our fingers for is to see the precipitous decline that's occurred in the last 3 weeks. Hopefully that will continue. Kate, could you advance, please? So that just, again, the previous slide was a weekly basis. This is monthly. You can see that we really did go up after Halloween with our total cases. And as of Friday, we were at 921 cases, and certainly as of today, we're higher. Next slide, please. Test by month. So our positivity rate in town, you can see Back in the spring, total number of tests were lower. Now with the availability of testing, lots of tests in December, almost 6,500 more tests were done, and 223 positives, a positivity rate of 3.4%. We're doing a lot of testing, and that's one of the reasons why, of course, the numbers are high. Next slide, please. The age distribution has changed. During the spring, you can see that the largest number of cases, that would be the slide to the right, largest number of cases were in the 50 to 59-year-old age group. And if you go to the slide to the left, we're seeing more younger cases than we did before. Next slide, please. A fairly low level of hospitalizations and deaths relative to the number of cases. I mean, no hospitalization is good, and certainly no death is good. And not everybody who's hospitalized or died exclusively because of COVID. There were other comorbidities involved. But in each case, person who was hospitalized was found to have COVID. Person who died was also found to have COVID. Not necessarily the actual cause of death, but it was found at that time when they were tested. Next slide, please. We've had the testing facility in Leroy West, which is now running 6 days a week. It's really been heavily utilized. You can see January so far to the 21st, 1,700 cases, tests, and most of those are Darien residents, but a lot of folks come in from out of town because of the convenience, and 26 positive results for Darien in the most recent. Those are, they offer antigen quick tests as well as the PCR testing at that facility. And I think there's one more slide. And that's just access to the school portal and the state alert system. To move forward, I think that what I'd like to talk about now is the vaccine availability. There's going to start to be a new slide that will be able to show numbers of vaccine offered in town. I'm pleased to say that our first COVID vaccine clinic was held last week on Wednesday, and we have one scheduled for tomorrow. Hopefully it won't snow too much. And then we have another one on Wednesday. These are targeted specifically for folks over 75 years old. And we're doing all of this by appointment. We're partnering with the Human Services Department and the Senior Center to do outreach to our seniors and making appointments for them. The system that was set up by the state and by CDC is really quite complicated. I don't know if anybody's actually gone through it, the VAM system. It's quite complicated, and you know, we have a good working relationship with our agencies in town, and we're working together to actually arrange for our seniors to we make the appointments for them. Not only are we making the initial appointments, we're making the follow-up appointments, because I think everybody knows by now that the vaccines that have been approved thus far, you need to have 2 administrations of them. We're getting the Moderna vaccine. That's a 28-day minimum period of time between the 2 doses. So on Wednesday last week, when folks came in, we made appointments for them in 4 weeks' time to come back for their 2nd dose. I am very anxiously awaiting the arrival and approval for the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which is a single dose. That will simplify this whole process of administering vaccines incredibly, so that we don't have to try to figure out how to do 2 doses. With that, as I said, I'm very pleased that we're able to offer vaccine now, so that we're kind of in my mind, we've turned a corner, and maybe we could start rolling back on this COVID problem right now. We're a couple of weeks away, according to the governor, from opening up the vaccines to others, essential workers, including teachers and firemen who aren't actual first responders for health reasons. And let's see here. So far, according to Governor Lamont in today's address, he said there were 265,000 first doses given, 42,000 second doses given, for a grand total of 308,500 total doses. Total vaccines administered. There were requests for 150,000 vaccines from providers across the state for last week, and the state received 46,900 doses. So as you can see, you know, what you order, you're not going to get. So for us, on our first order, we ordered 100, we didn't get any. Our second one, we ordered 600, we got 400. And our most recent, we ordered 400, we had 200. So we're going to keep ordering enough so that we could stay at least a week ahead of our schedule. We're booking those appointments. We're already booked full for tomorrow and mostly done for Wednesday. And we're looking forward to starting to book for next week. With that, I'll take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David.
You're welcome.
Lisa Yarnell had her hand raised.
Lisa?
Yes, David. Yes, David, can you hear me? I'm
Yes, I
sorry.
can.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for sharing the information. I think the more that the public knows, the better we can be informed and try to help the process. But I have a question. I'm not sure why Connecticut thinks that the borderline of 106 or Hoyt Street makes the difference between a 75-year-old who could get sick and a 65-year-old who could get sick on the other side of the street. And I don't understand why Connecticut chose to be so different than New York.
Are you expecting me to explain that?
Yeah,
I'm
well, I
sorry.
don't have any
I'm
information,
sorry. You know,
so
I agree
I'm
with
hoping
you. I agree with you. You know, and so, you know, we get asked questions, you know, so theoretically, you know, so we have folks who call up and they say, well, I'm 78, my wife is 64. So technically we should say, no, your wife can't get vaccine because she doesn't meet the criteria established by the state. Well, we are making allowances for certain conditions and situations. But we have also been told very directly, we being local health departments have been told very directly, you need to actually target the 75-year-old plus group primarily at this point.
But if you look at your charts, 82% of the cases are under 75 years old.
I'm not the one making the decisions as to prioritizing populations.
Okay, Kate, any?
Yep. Stacy TA.
Hi, David. I was just wondering what the current staffing is for the health department and how you guys are handling contact tracing for the town and how you are communicating your vaccination clinics.
Let me take the second question first, because the vaccination clinics have been really, the seniors have been calling ever since the news has come out about them being eligible for vaccines. So we're really doing it by phone and outreach to the seniors directly. Excuse me. We also have the voting registration list. So from whoever doesn't contact us directly, we'll go off the voter registration list and contact others that way. So it's a direct outreach for our residents at this point. For other populations, such as the firemen and the teachers and the other essential workers, you know, the public works departments and so on, we have the rosters and they're ready to go. As soon as we're told that those folks are eligible for vaccines, they'll be uploaded, and they can upload it to the CDC website, and they'll be able to get vaccinated or sign up to be vaccinated. And at that time, Darien will be one of the locations in the area where folks can go to be vaccinated, because at that point, it's a choice that people can make where they want to go. That's one of the nice things about the CDC system. It has, and actually the state is working on an enhanced 211 information network where you go online and you can see where vaccines are being administered and you could sign up. That's in the future. That's still a few weeks away. As to contact tracing, we're working with, of course, the schools directly. We have a couple of nurses that have been doing contact tracing diligently and following up on all our cases, the positive cases that we have the reports for. And as far as even doing clinics, we've had quite a few people volunteer. We've had doctors and nurses offer their services and assistance to us to run the clinics. So, you know, I'm feeling pretty comfortable about the level of service that we're able to provide the community at this time.
Okay, I had Jan Raymond next.
Jan?
Thank you, David. I have a comment and a question. I was vaccinated last week, I think on the first day of your clinics, but I wanted to say that I got an email from Human Services telling me that I could go one of 3 hours, and I picked an hour and went, and it was seamless. And I just wanted to congratulate you and other employees in the health department for the job that they're doing. My question is, how concerned are you that those of us who got the first vaccine, because of shortages, may not be able to get the second vaccine? I don't know how you're planning on, when it's a shortage, of getting everybody the first vaccine and then holding off, or are you confident that you're going to have the second vaccine? What is your feeling about that?
Well, the governor promised today. That very question was asked of the governor today, and he expressed total confidence that we will be able to meet the needs for that second dose. You know, that's all I can say. You know, the governor promised.
Okay, I had Teresa vote.
Thank you, Teresa.
Teresa, you're muted.
Sorry. A couple of questions. Well, one, I didn't listen to the governor today, but I would imagine he can't make promises unless the federal government sends vaccines to us. So I don't know if that's all in the governor's hands in terms of how many vaccines the state of Connecticut can and cannot give. But my real question is, with regard to contact tracing, especially within the schools, because we do get emails every single night from Elisa Casucci. What happens during the school breaks? Are we still relying on the school nurses when technically we're not, you know, the schools are not in session, to field those calls and to do that contact tracing, or does it then go to the town to do that? Thanks.
The school nurses do the tracing for the school population. They're directly involved, whether it's during school, whether it's school are in session or whether they're not. So the dividing line is that for us as a town, they're still doing their contact tracing. We communicate on a daily basis, whether school's in session or not, with respect to positive cases. I get a list, Alicia gets a list, and we make sure that we're on the same page. And so anyway, it doesn't matter whether school's in session or not. The nurses do the contact tracing for the students.
Werner Delmittner.
Hi, David. Thank you for sharing the data with us on the number of COVID tests that we have been executing. I have two questions to that statistic. Number one, are all of these tests just for people who were taking the tests at Leroy, whether they are Darien residents or Norwalk or Stanford or from somewhere else? And number two, what is the capacity? Because it looks like we're currently at about 5,000 a month.
Anybody can go to the testing facility at Leroy, but there are, Kate, if on that PowerPoint, can you scroll back, please? So that one, that's at this particular slide is only for the Leroy West. This is all the tests that are done there, and as you can see in the middle column, that's for Darien residents. The one to the left, number of tests, that includes folks from anywhere, everywhere. There's lots of zip codes that get tested at the Darien testing site. And if you scroll one back more, Kate, maybe it's another one. No, let's see. Total COVID tests by month. This is everywhere. So it's not just in Darien. This could be testing in Stanford, Norwalk, or anywhere else, but as a Darien resident. So you can see that in December, there were 6,554 tests. That also includes the residents of our extended care facility, our assisted living facilities. And they're being tested routinely. So it's a comprehensive number that includes at least from our drive-through, we do keep track of Darien residents and out-of-town residents. But this one is specific for Darien residents only.
So what is the second question was, what is the capacity for that testing?
Well, right now they're running one lane through that testing site, and they can up it. So they're doing, I think the most they've ever done was close to 200 a day, and they can double that easily. So we're not at capacity there, but they can ramp up if the demand calls for it. I don't know exactly what the capacity is, because one of the things that's great about that particular location is that we can queue up cars and do double lanes if we had to. So, you know, especially since at the train station parking lot isn't being heavily utilized for commuters any longer, or at least for the time being. So it's hard to say what the actual capacity is, but we're not at it. We still have plenty of capacity. It's elastic.
Okay, Tara Worm.
Yes, hi, thank you. I was just curious what your take was on schools not being fully in person yet, even though the transmission within school is practically zero.
Well, I think it's twofold. It's not just transmission in school. It was the holiday season, and we were concerned about how that might impact staffing as well as students. So it was to try to kind of maintain some buffer and kind of be cautious approach to getting back into school after the holidays, because there were so many positive cases and in-house transmission. So we were just trying to be cautious about not going too quickly.
Thank you. I understand that. I actually appreciate that they were kept out right after the holidays, but now they're not going back. Some of them aren't going back until March 1st.
Yeah, it's a phased-in return. And so again, you know, it's recognizing the other cautionary circumstances that we're in. One is that we're also being warned about this new, more highly contagious form of COVID. You know, so we're not sure what the impact of that's going to be. And then the other thing that I think that, you know, that I certainly am concerned about in a huge way is the fact that scholastic sports can resume. Back in the fall, when school first opened and schools were in session, most of the cases that we were finding were associated with sports and hockey and soccer, and you know, not through school, but school-age kids, through the sporting activities and the activities before and after games. So now that we're having both the more highly contagious COVID form and scholastic sports occurring, we still want to take it carefully. You know, it's just we just want to be careful.
Laura Pesci-Gray?
Yes, I have two questions. One, the vaccination clinics, they're being held at Town Hall, correct?
Yes.
How does that work in terms of the elderly? Do they have to stand online? Where are they being received? And how, like, do we have staff on the premises in case somebody gets an allergic reaction or they adversely react poorly to the shot for whatever reason?
Right. We have wheelchairs available and we'll help folks in that need to get in. There are no lines because it's by appointment only. You know, so we want to make sure that people aren't queuing. That's the whole point. You know, we want to make sure people are staying separate. And you know, on Wednesday, our last one, it worked out so well. We have the staff that will assist seniors to get in. As I said, if they need a wheelchair, we have them accessible. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't recall. What's the rest of your question?
She went down the list. David, the other thing is, you know, we blocked off the circle last Wednesday so that the seniors could park and easily walk into the gym, but the future senior clinics will be in the Mather Center, correct?
Only on Tuesdays. So our schedule, we couldn't get the gym for 2 consecutive days because of activities going on in the gym. So what we have is our senior clinics are going to be in the Mather Center on Tuesdays. So they'll be able to, the seniors will be able to access the Mather Center the way they typically do. And on Wednesdays, it'll be in the gym. And that's going to be that way for the next month. And then we'll just be in the gym.
I think the other question was, what do you have in place in case somebody has a reaction to the shot?
Well, beginning tomorrow, we're going to have Post 50, a representative from Post be there. So, and we do have, there's a waiting period where we have anyone who's received the vaccine has to sit for 15 minutes. And we have nurses there, and we had for Wednesday anyway, Post was on call. So we're ready to respond.
That's great.
And one more, Bert.
Yes, David, thank you for your good work. I had a test done today at CVS in Stamford, and there was no charge. I hear that if you have it done at the Leroy West parking lot that is organized by the town, it's $200. Is there any effort to get that down to maybe not zero, but to a better price?
Well, we've reviewed various other providers, and first of all, it was very difficult to find somebody who wanted or who was able to do it as a drive-through. Some of the other organizations want to be inside. You know, they want to have their own, they want to do it out of their own facility. And this particular organization has, I'm sure if you've been by there, they've kind of created their own infrastructure to do it. But certainly we have continued to explore other methods of having testing be done at less or no cost. And we just simply haven't been successful in finding that. At this point, the Everpoint, who's offering the testing service right now, is offering receipts so people can, you know, submit to their insurance companies for reimbursement. But it's a service, and you know, it's not free, and most testing isn't free because it's being underwritten by somebody, either the state or some kind of a grant from somewhere, because this testing's not free. You know, it just isn't. And at this particular point, this was the best circumstance that we could come up with at the time, and we didn't want to leave the town exposed with no testing at all.
Thank you, David. We really appreciate your making yourself available to us tonight. It's great to have the access directly to you and to get some answers to a bunch of questions that are out there. It's in a time when there's a lot going on in your world. We appreciate you taking a moment out to talk to us, get us some information, and get some questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, I'm certainly available to do this on a regular basis as we go through this crisis, and look forward to chatting with everyone again. Thank you.
Thank you, David. The next item is consideration action on nomination of Craig Young to the 5 Mile River Commission. From Park and Rec, the chair, Adele Coniff.
Good evening. Adele Coniff, District 3. Can you hear me, Seth?
Yes, clear as a bell.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. RTM Parks and Recreation Committee. I'd like to move 21-1, consideration and action on nomination of Craig Young to the 5 Mile River Commission for the submission to the governor for appointment. Do I have a second?
Jim Cameron.
Thank you. With no objection, I'd like to waive the reading of the resolution. The 5 Mile River Commission is a state agency established by Connecticut statute with regulatory jurisdiction over the navigation, pollution, and conservation of the 5 Mile River and its drainage basin. In addition, the commission is guided by ordinances adopted by Darien and Norwalk regarding the oversight of the river. FMRC monitors moorings and collects mooring usage fees, including fees for flexible use moorings. They maintain navigational markers and are involved with dredging when necessary. The commission also reviews applications for docks and other waterfront construction activities, issuing written decisions as appropriate. There are 4 commissioners, 2 from Darien and 2 from Norwalk, who are appointed by the governor of Connecticut. This equal representation recognizes that the river is flanked geographically on the west by Darien and on the east by Norwalk. The commissioners are assisted by the harbor superintendent, assistant harbor superintendent, and an administrative assistant. At present, Norwalk is represented by Matthew Marion as chairman and Robert DeGrette. Darien is currently represented by William Jessup. Craig Young is being recommended to fill the vacancy created when Dirk Leisure, Darien's other commissioner, moved out of town. Craig Young is the founder and president of Eland & Associates, LLC. He was former director of sales with UK Broadband and founder and director of sales with Red Spectrum Limited. Previously, he was product manager with Bartizan Corporation. Mr. Young is a graduate of Emory University and lives in Darien on 5 Mile River Road. He's an avid boater, hunter, fisherman, and conservationist. After interviewing Mr. Young from both the Both the 5 Mile River Commission and the Darien Board of Selectmen have voted to support his nomination and appointment by the Governor of Connecticut to the 5 Mile River Commission, enthusiastically asking the RTM to do the same. Adele Coniff.
Thank you, Adele. Great. Are there any other committees that want to report out? How are we doing on that one, Kate?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, any town officials? Okay,
Nope, nobody.
okay. And anybody from the floor, RTM?
Doesn't appear to be anybody.
Okay. Then we're ready to vote.
All right, give me a sec.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we have 98% have voted yes, nobody has voted no, and we've had a couple of abstentions. So I'd say the motion passes.
Yes, the motion is passed. The next item on the agenda is 21-2. Consideration action on the approval of a submission of $162,320 for state reimbursement on COVID-19 expenses for the Finance and Budget Committee. Jack Davis.
I'm Jack Davis, Chairman of the RTM Finance and Budget Committee. I move 21-02, consideration and action on approval of submission of $162,320 for state reimbursement of COVID-19 expenses. Do I hear a second?
I see Mac Patrick.
Thank you. If there's no objections, I wish to waive the reading of the full resolution. Last month, on December 16th, the state of Connecticut notified municipalities of an immediate distribution of an additional $45.5 million coronavirus relief funds. The CRF was originally in support to municipality costs for July 1st, 2020 to December 31st, 2020. The period covered was expanded subsequently to be July 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2021, with funds being able to be carried forward into the next fiscal year, which would be fiscal year 2022. Funds were allocated to municipalities based upon a formula, which was 33% population density, 33% population adjusted equalized net grand list per capita, and 34% just on pure population. Darien's allotment equaled $162,320. The deadline for filing this allotment was December 18th, 2020, 2 days after the state notified everyone. The submission requires RTM authorization. It's important to note that this authorization is being made retroactive to the submission date of December 18th, 2020. For the object of expediency, there is specific allocations of these funds to include public safety officers, and I put in the definition in the report that I sent to everyone, and public health employees, which would include school nurses and our health department and other people who are working on COVID. The guidance provides that funding may be used to meet payroll expenses for public safety, public health, healthcare, human services, and other similar employees whose services are substantially dedicated to mitigating or responding to COVID-19 public health emergency. As a matter of administration convenience, the entire payroll cost of an employee whose time is substantially dedicated to mitigating or responding to COVID-19 is eligible to be provided. And that eliminates some of the payroll nightmare would be for how many hours everybody's doing. In total, Darien has received $202,633 consisting of this CRF support for $162,320 and a prior amount received of $40,280.33. The amounts received are being put into the town's books and records as revenue and grant revenue. It's not offsetting expenses as if it's contra, although those expenses will be accounted for by the finance department. The RTM Finance and Budget Committee met on January 13th, 2021, and unanimously approved this resolution and recommends the same to the full RTM. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Are there any other committees?
I have Thomas Moore with his hand raised.
Okay. Tom?
Must have put it down again. It might have been a mistake.
Okay. I was I was thinking there for a minute, which committee was that going to be? Anyway, any town officials?
I see no hands raised.
Okay, and any RTM members?
Jim Cameron.
Okay, Jim?
Can you hear me okay, Jack?
Jack's muted, but we can hear you.
Okay, great. Two quick questions, Jack. One, am I correct in assuming these are state funds and not federal funds? And second of all, how much does the amount that Darien has received in these grants compare to actual costs that the town has incurred?
I'm going to answer the first one, the second one first. And I can forward it to anyone who so desires. The costs associated with what any town may or may not have spent on COVID has no relationship to what this grant is. The grant is based upon formula for all 169 communities within the state. And I believe that certain communities may not have the capability of having to spend it in the 6 months, which is why they expanded it to be for an 18-month period. In speaking to our own town administrators, not just Kate, but to Jen, chances are that Darien will be able to use the $162,000 in the current fiscal year. So that's the first part. To answer the second part, your first question of whether or not they're federal funds or state funds, I read the document and quite honestly, I don't know the answer to that. All I know is that they announced that there was $45.5 million available for coronavirus aid. I don't know if that came out of the last package that was approved by Congress. I'm assuming it probably did. The timing makes it look like the more recent funding that happened in December coincides with this.
Okay. Anyone else?
Laura Pesci-Gray.
Laura?
Are these funds basically an estimated, like they look at the town, they look at the size of each town and they allocate or estimate potential costs related to COVID, and that's how they're allocating them?
No, again, I'm going to go through it again. They devised a formula that they looked at the population density of each of the 169 towns. And the amount that they wanted to allocate for that was 33%. Then they did 33% of the population based upon the grand list per capita. Hence, you could imagine that Darien's going to get less because we have a larger grand list per capita than, say, Naugatuck. And then they do it solely on population, which is 34. And, you know, we're not one of the bigger communities in the state, but we're also not the smallest, as some of them have very low populations. So they put that all into a system and they say, here's how we're going to divvy up the $45 million so that it's equally distributed based upon the economic value of a town, based upon their population density, and based upon their overall population. So those are the three factors. How they came up with the numbers, I honestly don't know, but I do know that they issued a report, which I can distribute to everyone, that lists all 169 towns and what they were allocated. So Greenwich actually had, because of their density, other things like that, had more money than we're getting, but they also have a much larger population. So, and probably a more dense population as well. So that's basically the formula that they came up with. I don't think it had to do as much with the actual costs that each of the communities have, because that's also relative as well. But you know, in certain ways, we shouldn't be looking a gift horse in the mouth. The 162,000 will reduce some of the funds that we've already done, and it's helpful to our town, as well as the other 168 towns in the state that also are allocating public safety and public health employees to fight this pandemic.
Okay, Rolf Oben.
Yes, Jack, do we know how much money the town has spent thus far since the beginning of COVID on expenses that are directly related to COVID?
The answer to that is absolutely yes. Both the town and the Board of Education have been very good in recording. On the Board of Education, they set up a special RC, that's like their cost center, to account for all the expenses simply relating to COVID. On the same side, and it's in the Board of Finance's packet of their January 19th meeting that they have, they listed the total amount of COVID expenses by category, by area, and I'm going to tell you, they've done an excellent job on it. And interesting enough, I do actually have some of this here because I was doing it for budget. Let's see. In certain ways, they're listing some of the COVID expenses. The first one, and Kate, you can chime in on this, but there was one analysis that had about 97,000 covered on that on one of the sheets. And then there's another analysis of COVID that lists things from legal expenses, police overtime, contract chasing, PPE face masks, election signs, health department consultant, summer camp face coverings, tent, tax software programming, parks portable toilets, test things, and that for another 173,000. Our two boards have done an excellent job in recording this, as well as recording all of the, thank you, Kate, as well as recording all of the reimbursements, FEMA awards, local health grants, public health preparedness grants, Secretary of State reimbursements. And, you know, I have to admit that they're accounting for this on both sides, both boards, down to the penny. So, and it's been reviewed, and they discuss, the Board of Ed discussed it at their monthly finance meetings. The town is constantly in review of this. And as I said, the first 6 months report, and this is like the third time I've seen this report in various states, has a monthly report on this as well. So that's a long way to say, yes, they're accounting for it and they're doing a heck of a job on it as well. Does that properly explain it, Kate?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Others?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, so we ready to vote?
Okay, just give me a second. Okay. There you go. Okay, we have 99% voting yes, 1% voting no.
Great, then the
Yes, we
motion
do have-
passes.
Yeah, we do have a hand raised.
Oh,
Sheila
okay.
Sherwood.
Hello? Yes?
Might be a mistake.
Okay.
Okay.
That concludes tonight's business, I think. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Thomas Moore.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and,
How about it?
we're ready to adjourn then. Go ahead and post the poll.
You have a second from Clara. I'll post the
Oh,
poll.
thank you, Clara. Second, thank you.
Well, there is somebody who wants to stay, but you have 99% voting yes, adjourn.
Great. The meeting's adjourned.